toxic masculinity. Teacher caught saying she teaches social justice all day, every day. I don't think that this is too surprising. I don't think that this is too outrageous. This is basically just how teachers teach now. So to me, I'm not that shocked by it, but it is a story on the Daily Caller, and it leads to something else which I wanted to show you guys. So let's go ahead and read through some of this. You're on the mic in the auditorium. Teacher caught saying she teaches social justice all day, every day. So we can kind of see here a little bit of an insight into how these like leftist academics talk about what they're doing. They obviously know that what they're doing isn't necessarily appropriate, because they're singling it out as something that is worthy of note, right? And if you're just teaching what you should be teaching, it's not worthy of note. I mean, I don't think there's teachers that go, well, what'd you teach today? Well, you're not going to believe this. I teach history, right? American history. I taught about the Revolutionary War. Isn't that crazy? Oh my! I taught about the Revolutionary War, guys. Oh, I know. I love teaching about the Revolutionary War. It was so great. Yeah. We teach Nobody would talk about that because that's normal, right? That's what you would expect. There's nothing abnormal about it. But even amongst radical leftists, teaching about social justice is something that they realize is a little bit weird or maybe inappropriate. So it's worthy of note in some way or another, and we'll see here what they're doing. So I don't want to read the article. I just want to play for you the audio. So it's going to be very hard to see. She's up in this corner here. I'll try to blow it up, but let's watch.
Hey, Gina, you teaching at Roosevelt this semester?
Yes, Ralph, I am.
Great. What are you teaching?
I'm teaching middle school theory and practice, basically.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's quite wonderful.
I love the university. I just do.
I have to say, I do too.
Yeah, it's a great place. I'm so glad you're there too. You fit in so well with their, the university's philosophy and mission, right?
I mean, it's all social justice all day, every day. I get to talk about all the things I love all the time.
All day, every day.
All day in the day gig, all night in my night classes. When I'm here, really, I'm living the life over here.
Yeah, I always flip out the kids that take my master's class on fiscal policy and public budgets when the first 3 or 4 classes are devoted to philosophy of social justice and how you organize society. We don't talk about one, budgetary item. They're like, oh man, Professor Martiri, this is a really weird way to teach a budget.
It's part of everything, right? What a foundation.
If you don't understand your values, you can't allocate resources among public priorities that are scarce but all needed, right?
All right, so anyway, you kind of get the idea. These people are sort of laughing about how, we're brainwashing kids, we got to talk about what we want to talk about. Look, being a teacher isn't about pushing your own social agenda, your own political agenda. That should not be what being a teacher is, right? Being a teacher should be about teaching the truth, teaching facts, not teaching social policy that you want. That is very obviously, something that is disputed, right? You should, if you're going to teach something that's disputed, you say this is disputed. You don't say this is definitely true just because I believe it and I want to believe it. These people know that this is disputed stuff, that this is not so cut and dry. This is not just fact. But let's go ahead and look at, I think, a much more egregious example of something. So this is another college. This is Cypress College in California. At least that's what I read somewhere. And this is a university professor who is arguing with a student emotionally. Obviously, she's very emotional about this, right? She's distraught that this student disagrees with her. But that's what colleges are for, right? I mean, actually, one of my favorite university professors was a communist, an open communist. And the reason he was one of my favorite professors is because despite the fact that he was openly communist, he encouraged people to disagree with him, right? He was an American. He believed in, what he believed, and he thought that students had a right to express their ideas. So he believed in free speech, which I loved. And we used to have lunch sometimes and stuff. He was a good guy. But a lot of my university professors pretended that they were not communists, right? They pretended that they were essentially just your sort of typical American capitalist Democrat, which I was in school in like the early 2000s. So back then, not every single teacher proclaimed that they were a communist. This is back when that was still considered to be a bit shocking that somebody would consider themselves a communist. But yeah, I had teachers who would I had one teacher who gave me bad grades because I disagreed with him in class. Not even a joke. And, but this teacher who proclaimed that he was a communist, he encouraged us to disagree with him and to make our cases. And the great thing about that class was I think I probably won every single debate that we ever had in class between the two of us. And he didn't care. He was actually fine with it because there was open dialogue. And I remember one point, he had presented a particular case, and I raised my hand and I said, this is very early on in the class, and I said, everything that you've just said, you sound like you believe in communism. You sound like a communist. And at the time, because it was still sort of like, people considered that to be a bit shocking. Everybody in my class let out kind of an audible, ooh. Chris just called the professor a communist. And the teacher went, yeah, what's wrong with that? Everybody in the class went, oh! It was a pretty funny thing. Pretty funny moment. But unlike other teachers who will preach socialist ideas and communist ideas, he admits that they're communist ideas. He would admit that they're communist ideas. Most of my teachers would preach communist ideas and they wouldn't admit it. He would admit it, which I respected a lot more. And we could have an open debate about it. And I destroyed him on every point because it's tough in college, because in college most people don't really know about politics. They don't really know about what communism is. They don't really know about any of that stuff. So when I'm sitting there in class and I'm listening to the teachers, I was able to decode what they were doing a lot easier than most of the students were. I don't know why I was into that kind of stuff, but whatever. I knew about it. And you can defeat somebody's argument if you know what they're saying, because then you can call them out on their little tricks and their lies and their schemes and stuff like that. With this guy, I didn't have to do that because he was open about it. Anyway, enough about my time in college. So here's what I don't like college professors generally, because I think that they are smug a-holes. I mean, think about it. If you're in a class where you're teaching a particular subject and you know more than anyone else in that class, they're taking the class to learn from you. You are essentially a god, right? Like, you are all knowing and they know nothing, right? And so you can abuse that power, or you can, with some humility, recognize that you are not in fact a god. You're just a flawed human like the rest of us, and go about teaching the course with some humility and respect for the students. And I did have some teachers like that in university, I've been a teacher, by the way, and when I was teaching, I did teach that way with humility, and I respected the students. But I would say when I was in school, this was like probably 1 out of 10 professors showed some kind of respect to the students. I mean, it was awful. I hate university professors. I hate their smugness, and I hate their willingness to exploit their position. But with that said, let's watch this video of this tyrannical, well, I'm just going to say it, tyrannical bitch. And you can tell me for yourself what you think about her, guys. Let me change the audio here.
I agree.
All right, so you brought up the police in your speech a few times. So what is your main concern? Since, honestly, the whole reason police, it is systemic. The issue is systemic because the whole reason we have police departments in the first place, where did it stem from? What's our history? Going back to what Jeremy was talking about, what does it stem from? It stems from people in the South wanting to capture runaway slaves.
Maybe they shouldn't be heroes. Maybe they don't belong on a kid's show.
So I disagree with what Jeremy said about it, because I think cops are heroes and they have to have a difficult job, but we have to have that
All of
fine
them?
life. Oh, I mean, I'd say a good majority of them. You have bad people in every business and every
Yet,
part.
yet
Well,
a lot of
wait.
police officers have committed atrocious crimes and have gotten away with it and have never been convicted of any of it.
And
And I
they,
say this as a person who has family members who are police officers.
yes, I understand. And this is what I believe. This is my opinion. And this is, not popular to say, but I do support our police, and we have bad people, and the people that do bad things should be brought to justice. I agree with that. But I think that, I'm saying it again.
They haven't.
Well, I agree with you on that point of they should, right?
Okay, so what is your bottom line point? You're saying police officers should be revered, viewed as heroes? They belong on TV shows with children?
I think they are heroes in a sense because they come to your need and they come and help you, and they have a problem just like every other business, but we should fix that. But I think they're heroes. Well, they're
I think that's the problem.
All right, so I love this. This guy is so reasonable. This guy is so rational. This guy's making so much sense. He's so balanced. He's not even telling her, that she's an idiot and that she's wrong. She is an idiot. She is wrong. But he's saying, look, you got to take it as it is. You're going to have some bad eggs everywhere. It doesn't necessarily mean that the entire group of them are bad people, right? Which is essentially what this woman is saying. But what struck me as particularly crazy about what she's saying is that she's saying that the American police force in its entirety was developed in order to capture escaped slaves. What the hell is she talking about? Okay, first of all, that's just not true. All right, you had police officers in America before, in the North where slavery was illegal. I mean, it's not like in places where slavery was illegal, you didn't have police. You always had police. You had police in Europe before slavery was ever a thing. Black slavery of Africans. Slavery of before slavery of Africans was ever a thing in Europe, they had police. You always had police. You always had police. I think even in like primitive societies, there's always some people who are there that are supposed to like enforce the rule of law, right? I've done a bit of studying on European history and when the number of murders was reduced significantly in Europe. And before capital punishment was widely used in order to strictly enforce the law, you had widespread murder. You had a lot of murder. You had high rates of murder. And then the Europeans figured out, okay, if we will employ capital punishment for a variety of offenses, it'll basically scare the crap out of everybody and they'll stop committing horrible crimes. And it worked, right? Capital punishment solved that problem. As we have developed into more sophisticated society and murder has declined significantly, we've stopped having to use capital punishment as much as a deterrent. But initially, that was really what deterred people from committing crimes. And it brought us into an era of humanity in which people just don't commit crimes that much, right? You just don't get the levels of criminality that you got, or the level of, I guess, violence that you got in Europe, hundreds of years ago. But with that kind of strict legal system came the need for police force. And I think, but I think even before that, you would have had judges, you would have had, the chief of a tribe might cast judgment on people and determine what the consequences of a particular crime would be. You certainly had laws in every society in the world, even in ancient times. So this idea that police is somehow developed as a means to catch escaped slaves, that's just a complete fantasy. And I think that comes from the Netflix documentary. There's this Netflix documentary that came out a little while ago about the carceral state, right? Which is what the left calls basically police officers and the judicial system, which I can never pronounce. There's this idea that the police and the judicial system are created to sort of perpetuate slavery in a legal way, right? So in some places you can get cheap or very, very cheap or free labor from criminals that are in prison, prisoners, and they're like, oh, this is just like slavery. This is just like slavery, and so because so many black people are in prison, they're making this parallel between the slave days and today. They're saying, oh, because in the slave days you would just take slaves and make them work for you. Now you're taking black people and making them work for you in the prison system, which is the same thing. But it isn't actually the same thing, because you have a choice about whether or not you want to go to prison. Certainly some people are unjustly imprisoned, but it's fairly rare. I mean, the whole system is basically set up to stop people committing crimes. They get put into prison, and then of course there's, that could be dealt with, this idea that prisoners work for very little money or something like that. That can be, that could be looked at. I have no problem with that. But this idea that that's the purpose of the justice system, that's the purpose of police, I mean, that's completely insane. This woman is lying to her her students. And I don't know how we can conscience a university professor going around teaching students something that is demonstrably false, that is obviously untrue. I mean, this woman needs to lose her job. You cannot teach students things that are false. I mean, we can't send kids into the world. And this is the problem. This is why you have people at Twitter who will ban you for saying something that's true, because they work under these fundamental misperceptions of reality, right? This woman's probably one of those people that think 10,000 unarmed black men are killed every year by police. She's probably one of those. And she's sitting there teaching classes. I mean, certainly police are there to stop people from committing crimes, right? That's what police are there for, or to arrest people after they've committed crimes, really. I mean, that's the one thing that's a bit of a shame about the world, is that we have no way of predicting crimes. And so, I actually think probably Minority Report world would actually probably be a good thing. Minority Report was obviously let's see, Frank, my buddy Kurt says the media is to blame. They treat police officers doing their job as an offense to minorities, while at the same time refusing to report on minorities murdering their own people. That's exactly right. Couldn't have said it better myself. In fact, it was said so well that I want to finish discussing this story. We all know universities are lame and they teach wrong things. We all know not every cop is a hero, but a lot of cops are heroes. And to deny them that status, I think, is not only wrong, but delusional. A lot of cops are heroic and do heroic things. A lot of cops are a-holes, too. I mean, you've got good and bad people in all, in all aspects of life. This is what this kid was saying. Oh, look at that. Look how beautiful I am. I've got like a halo. It's like God is blessing the channel. I shouldn't say stuff like that. It's a little probably blasphemous, but it does look cool, right? Looks cool. All right, guys, let's move on to the next story. This is the last story of the day. This is actually a follow-up, sort of an extra story. Hold on, I need to find my paper here. There we go. All right, it's this is kind of funny. Lady Gaga has got her dogs back. This is fantastic. Everybody can be very happy now, because Lady Gaga has got her dogs back. So let me go to this story. Hold on. So Lady Gaga, I don't know if you guys remember this. I reported on this earlier. Lady Gaga has like an assistant, right? Toxic Masculinity. Weekdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.